Your line is now muted.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending the second webinar in the Zero Energy Ready Home series on the program overview. This webinar will be recorded and the recording will be sent out to all attendees. If there are any issues with audio, please write in the chat, which can be generated at the bottom of your screen by hovering over the chat bubble, clicking on that. My name is Erica DeLello, and I'm a project manager for NORESCO. With a combined effort from the Colorado Energy Office and the High Country Conservation Center, this series is brought to you today. Jess Hoover is here to tell you a little bit more about the organization. Jess, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself. There you go. Okay.
Thank you so much, Erica, and thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. HC3 is a local environmental nonprofit here in Summit County. And as Erica mentioned, we are very happy to co-sponsor this webinar series with the Energy Office and NORESCO. We work on a number of sustainability issues in Summit County, including climate action, energy efficiency, water conservation, and waste reduction, and building code support. So as you can see on this slide here, we are providing energy consulting to residents, businesses, and builders across the community to help support the new sustainable building codes that have been adopted in many of our jurisdictions. And we've also partnered with another local energy firm, Deeper Green Consulting, to sponsor a local Herz Rater training class, which should be wrapping up next week. So we are happy to support the local building community and our building professionals with code compliance. So please reach out to us, for those of you in Summit County, if you have any questions about the new sustainable building codes, then we can point you in the right direction. With that, I will pass it back to Erica. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess. So we've been working with the Colorado Energy Office to provide trainings just like this one. In addition to trainings, we've put together a code adoption toolkit that reviews cost implications of changing code cycles, the benefits, and other compliance resources, and more. So we're working on that. And then also a troubleshooting guide that will cover iCode conflicts, alignments, clarifications, and passive compliance. The troubleshooting guide is being wrapped up now, but the code adoption toolkit is posted to the Colorado Energy Office's website. If you have the time to provide feedback on that, feel free to shoot me an email if there's more things that you think could be useful. And then on the next slide, it's shown a bunch of our upcoming trainings, and you'll see all of the Zero Energy Ready Home series and a PV webinar that's directed towards mountain communities. And then if you do have any projects in Denver County, there's also specific trainings available on their amendments as well. I will be sending out a short survey at the end of this presentation with all the links to register for these trainings and resources. If you take the time to answer the survey questions, it'll help us continue to provide these trainings. Also, I will be muting everyone's lines to reduce background noise. Sometimes WebEx does act up and unmutes or has some feedback in the background, so I ask that you mute your line on your end as well. We do want to encourage questions though, so please use the chat function and I'll let our presenter know at the end of the presentation. Today, our presenter is Robbie Schwartz, and Robbie has been a champion of the building science industry for over 20 years. As principal of BuildTank Incorporated, Robbie works with builders of all sizes to ensure that their high-performance homes are efficient, healthy, and resilient. So I'll let Robbie take it from here.
Thank you very much, Erica and Jess, for sponsoring and for introducing the presentation today. Today we're going to be doing and looking at an overview of the Zero Energy Ready Home program and touching on all the topics that are listed on this slide, and there are a lot of them here. So we're going to dive right in with a little introduction and then move into these topics as listed on this slide. Again, love to have some dialogue at the end, so please type in questions as we go, and we will review those when we finish here at the end. Some of these slides are provided by the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home team, so I wanted to thank them for their efforts in helping us educate everybody across the country, really, with regards to the Zero Energy Ready Home program and what's going on there. What we are seeing is that the social climate has been changing over the last few years, and there's been more acceptance to the idea of zero energy ready building, zero energy building, net carbon neutral building, just taking that energy efficiency green building notion kind of to that next stage there, which makes you think a little bit about what is the relevance of the Iecc, because what we're seeing is that the codes and climate action programs that different municipalities are starting to implement are really far exceeding what the Iecc is doing and what it's ultimately meant to do. However, in the 2021 Iecc, there is a appendix pathway to zero energy, but it's not something that is mandatory by any means. And again, we're seeing a lot of jurisdictions move incrementally, I guess, to zero energy construction, and a lot of that is with regards to these climate action plans that these jurisdictions have out there. Now, when we talk from a code perspective, we're always baselining or having a reference from the 2006 Iecc. And thinking about the code adoption process a little bit, we see that from the 2006 to the 2009 Iecc, there was about a 15% increase in the efficiency that was gained in that code. That was primarily achieved by increasing R value and U value requirements. So in essence, prescriptive requirements that were differences from the 2006 to 2009. From the 2009 to the 2012, there was another 15% increase in efficiency approximately. And that was achieved primarily by dealing with house leakage. So if we think about the building science that we talked about before, part of the energy is moving in and out of our buildings by conduction, and that was handled in the 2009 cycle, and part of the energy movement in our house is happening by convection, and that was really handled in the 2012 cycle there. Now, from the 2012 to the 2015, maybe a 1 to 4% increase in efficiency, depending on who you talk to, and to the 2018, maybe another 1 to 4% increase in efficiency was achieved there. There weren't really huge increases in efficiency that were gotten in the 2015 and 2018 cycles, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of these jurisdictions have started thinking about climate action plans or climate and how they relate to codes and how we might be able to go further. In the 2021 cycle, it is projected that once everything gets confirmed and finalized, that there will be about a 10, potentially a 15% increase in efficiency that was gotten through this last cycle. But again, it hasn't been finalized yet, so we don't know for certain where that's going to be there. But it isn't actually taking us all the way to zero energy. And there's kind of a conflict in the code development world whether codes will take us there or the Iecc will take us there itself. What we do know is that this improvement in efficiency that has been gotten by codes has created potential, this 38%, I guess, increase in efficiency, roughly speaking, has created potentially a risk zone that the Zero Energy Ready Home program is really trying to address. And what I mean by that risk zone is if we look at one of these risks, which would be potential moisture damage, we see that energy flow through a more efficient thermal envelope is less. And because it's less, we get this colder surface on the exterior of our buildings. and that colder surface is prone to more wetting or condensation and less drying potential. And so there is this need to continually consider the applied building science and systems thinking that we talked about last time with regards to how we're building our homes now in order to mitigate this risk. And the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home Program is a means of applying that building science in order to mitigate this potential risk. Another risk that we have, although not as much in our climate as being a drier climate, but we have a comfort issue risk. This lessening of thermal flow through our building envelopes creates longer swing seasons there, and especially in more humid climates, the humidity in our houses and the humidity control that's needed in our houses becomes a bigger issue. So ensuring that we have properly designed and sized HVAC systems to deal with not only heating and cooling our house, but getting humidity control is an issue. And ensuring that we have HVAC systems, whether they're hydronic or electric or forced air systems, that are taking into account this change in our thermal envelope is crucial. And we're seeing that the majority of new houses really are designing that HVAC system before the house is built, and there's this disconnect between ensuring that what is specified for that thermal envelope is actually being executed, and that the design and performance of the HVAC system is actually meeting that thermal envelope there. So this is one of those potential risks. And then the third kind of risk that the Zero Energy Ready Home Program deals with is the tightening of our thermal envelope. As we tighten our thermal envelope and create better and more efficient homes, we also are potentially accumulating more contaminants inside that home unless we are dealing with ventilation in a meaningful way. And the Indoor Air Quality Program, or the Indoor Air Plus program that's tied to the Zero Energy Ready Home Program, is really dealing with this potential risk there. So as we're building more energy efficient homes through just the Iecc process, we need to think about these building science and systems thinking approaches in order to mitigate the potential risks that we're having. And again, the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home Program helps us think about that in those terms here. So what does Zero Energy Ready Home mean? So in order to deal with these risks, we're trying to optimize efficiency and get more energy efficient enclosures, energy efficient components in there, and integrate systems thinking and applied building science into the equation when we're thinking about designing and building the houses that we want to live in and we want to bring to market here. The next step is to ultimately do no harm there. So we have to have comprehensive water protection systems and water management systems to ensure that we're not getting repeated wetting of our assemblies, that we're marrying wetting potential and drying potential, and really ensuring that we have more drying potential than wetting potential there. Ensure that we have comfortable systems in our houses, all types of HVAC, again, depending on if you choose hydronic or forced air or whatever type of system that you're doing it, making sure that the system is wedded to the enclosure that we're building and that they're working together there. And then ultimately, proper indoor air quality concerns to have not only a look at the materials that we're bringing into our homes and building with, but that we have proper ventilation in our houses as well. So if we can maximize our thermal envelope and we can maximize our systems and components that we're putting into the house, then we're ultimately ready for the third step here, which is being ready to put solar on our homes to take us that next step to true zero energy here. And so what you see with the Zero Energy Ready Home Program, we'll talk a little bit more about this, is that it's not necessarily requiring a true zero energy home. It's getting us to this point where we're ready to put solar on our house and take us that next step here. So looking at this again, these different components or specs for the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program is optimizing that enclosure, optimizing the comfort system, ensuring that we have proper water management systems in our homes, not only for bulk water, but for water in its vapor state as well, complete indoor air quality systems, efficient components, and then we're ultimately ready for that solar at the end here to take it that next step. So another way to think about it is being future ready, and that's really what we're talking about here. The Zero Energy Ready Home program has been named that specifically because it's not a zero energy program. It's getting you to that point. It's future proofing that house. So we're moisture ready, we're comfort ready, we have technology and health. We're ready to put on that PV panel that will take us that next step. So hence the definition of the Zero Energy Ready Home program, which says that a high-performance home, it's a high-performance home which is so energy efficient that a renewable energy system can offset all or most of its annual energy consumption. What it is not saying is that you have to offset that annual consumption at the time of construction. So in essence, again, we're future-proofing that house there. So this definition means that we have a pathway. We've achieved a pathway to get to zero energy. We've maximized our thermal envelope. We've maximized the systems in our houses. And that generally speaking, if you've done a good job of that, you can only get to about a Herz 40 in that Herz rating system, which we'll talk about a little bit more. The rest of that to get to true zero is happening by applying or adding PV to your house or solar voltaic to your house there. So at a minimum, every home is future-proofed. And what we mean ultimately by future-proof is this example here. So we see that PV generation is increasing and improving over time here. So if I had a panel that could produce 200 watts now, in the future it could produce 500 watts there. So it's going to be easier to get to that zero energy if I've maximized my thermal envelope and I've taken into account the opportunity cost to do those things that are behind the drywall correctly and future-proof that house so that when it makes sense to add solar in the future, I'm able to take that house to zero energy. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't do that from the start, that we can't design the house and make it make sense to add solar at the beginning. But what it does mean is that the program doesn't require that you put that solar on and get all the way to zero energy from the get-go here. So what we're really been talking about is how do we define that thermal envelope and how do we maximize that thermal envelope's performance within reason to be able to make it make sense ultimately to put that PV on the house. And we have to remember that it's just not the thermal envelope that we're thinking about, but these other systems that we're putting into our house, specifically HVAC or air conditioning of the air in our houses to heat and cool our houses. What type of systems are we putting in there? What type of appliances are we putting in there? Because these are things that last for significant amounts of time, especially the thermal envelope. You know, we think that that house should last, 50 to 100 years. We're not going to want to go back in and upgrade that component of the house. If we're talking about HVAC systems, we're not going to want to go in and update the hydronic piping or the ductwork in that house. We want those things to be rock solid at the time of construction. We have that one-time opportunity cost to do those things right. But the boiler or the furnace or the PV system, those technologies will continue to advance, and we can change out those things and future-proof our houses to be able to change those things out easily and get to zero energy easily sometime in the future if we're not going to take it there from the get-go. So this difference between zero and zero energy ready is really this notion of maximizing our systems, taking advantage of that first-time opportunity cost to do the things behind the drywall correctly and in the best way possible and the most efficient way possible to set us up ready to get to zero energy in the future. And you see the zero energy house on the right. The biggest difference there is the addition of the PV. And just to stress it one last time, that PV can be added from the get-go, from the start of the project, but it's up to you. You can decide to go that direction or not. It's not a requirement of the program, and therefore it's not a requirement of what's happening up in Summit County there. So why, what's the kind of this business case for doing that? Why are people thinking about zero energy? Well, they're climate goals for 2030 and beyond, but we also see that we get a significant amount of energy bill or energy savings from just a dollar perspective there. And we get a significant amount of carbon emissions reduction by going this direction. So that's definitely part of the equation of why people want to go this direction to build more efficient homes. We also see that there's a consumer case as well, just a much better living experience inside our houses. We have better health and comfort. We have protection from the elements and from the cost of ownership. We have better quality and enhanced value in these houses. It has been shown over time that homes built to programs like Energy Star and the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home Program keep their value much more and have that long-term value and resale perspective, as well as from the first sale perspective, that there's advantages there. There's lower cost of ownership, so your monthly cash flow is higher. You're spending less on your utility bills, therefore you have more money to either save or spend on other things there. There's lower maintenance costs, and there's usually lower health expenses as well. People live more healthfully, if that's a word, inside of these homes than in other homes that haven't taken this into consideration there. From a builder's perspective, we see greater customer satisfaction. There's a better experience not only in the buying process, but in the living process there. We see lower ownership costs, and builders are recouping that by getting repeating business from people that are upgrading or moving forward in their houses, or just from word of mouth. There's less liability. There's greater quality management and quality assurance during the process of building there. And then there's a big marketing difference as well. So we will be talking a little bit about marketing and the rationale for marketing, even in Summit County where it's a requirement. If you take advantage of the marketing, you're going to be much better off and set there. What we do see is that the buyer is also becoming more and more informed there. So with the internet and Google and other resources out there, they know more and more, and that trend is growing, and it's starting to, in essence, skyrocket right now. They have access to all kinds of content and the ability to come to you much more informed and prepared. We're also seeing that through sites like this, that they're reviewing the product that is out there. So, they review movies, they review restaurants, and we're seeing homes and home builders being reviewed as well. And that can help or hurt you. So you want to make sure that you're doing your best and you're not getting a 1-star review, that you're getting that 5-star review out there. So the better you can implement these programs, the better your experience with these informed buyers will ultimately be. Informed buyers also have a bunch of tools available to them that weren't really available to them in the past. This being one of them. These IR cameras are incredibly cheap, and they might they're so cheap that they might end up in the hands of a home buyer. If not a home buyer, then somebody that might be consulting with the home buyer there, somebody wants to build their house. They can assess things like quality, insulation, and the thermal bridging components of houses. So they might come to you and ask, how are you dealing with this picture that I took in that? They can look at and assess the quality of windows. They might not know what they're looking at here, but this is a moisture issue that's associated with a thermal image there. But they can have a pretty good idea of good construction and bad construction very easily. And even though they might not buy these cameras, these images are all over the internet, and an informed buyer is going to see that and maybe come to you with questions and concerns about that. Informed buyers are increasingly aware of the living experience inside of houses and questioning how I can meet my core expectations. And if my core expectations are comfort and durability and health and all these other aspects, how can I build a house that will ultimately live better then? And so the Zero Energy Home Program gives us a platform for being able to create these houses that are proven to live better here. But we need to think about how we're going to ultimately design and build that house. And so what we recommend and the program recommends is beginning with an integrated design process. Some folks call this a building charrette, but really it's just a planning process. So in this integrated design process, we need to recognize that we might be doing something different than we've done in the past, and that's a change, and that change can be hard, but change can also lead us in good directions and help us understand the meaning of this change and why we're ultimately changing the way that we're constructing our houses there. To create better efficiency, to create better long-term durability, to lessen risk for us as builders, but also risk for our occupants that will be living in these houses. So it's super important to start early in this process of design and bring in the right people. Again, we have certain opportunity costs to get things right from the start. So design and planning are a big part of that opportunity cost to ensure that before the drywall goes on, that we have the right components and the right layers, the control layers and other components that we're putting inside of our buildings are done correctly there. This integrated design ultimately means how are we going to apply the building science to the building that we're doing, how we're going to integrate systems thinking and the ability to control airflow, thermal flow, and moisture flow in our buildings, and ultimately how do we take all of these different program requirements and integrate it into how we're going to build this ultimate house, because there are a lot of program requirements, and we'll be getting into these program requirements in the next couple sessions next week. But there are a lot of requirements and things that we have to do in order to make this house not only function, but can be compliant with the Zero Energy Ready Home program and the code that has adopted that program here. So when we think about integrated design, we might need to define the project, and we could define it as meeting the requirements of the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program, which ultimately is integrating 4 programs. We're integrating the Iecc, so the code, the true code, with Energy Star, with the Indoor Air Plus program, and with the other requirements of the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program. So there's a lot of defining and understanding that needs to be done early in the process here. We need to figure out how we're going to share responsibilities and bring in the right team members, from architects to you as a builder, to trade partners that might be partnering on this project. Are we all on the same page? Do we all understand the requirements? Do we all understand the details that are required to be successful there. These are things that this design integration process can help us determine here. Changing our perspective and thinking in this synergistic and holistic manner helps us view this construction process a little bit differently than we have in the past. How are we going to share information there? How are we going to track things during the time? How are we going to do the proper research for materials and building practices so that we're going to be successful in this process? And when we talk about success, we're ultimately trying to integrate the structure, the systems, the thermal enclosure into the particular climate that we're building in, and potentially for the specific occupant, or potentially regardless of the people that are living in that equation. Because often applied building science is trying to take the people out of the equation, because the people are the biggest wild card that we have in our home building scenario. We might be building a house for a retired couple, and for some reason they back out of the contract. And if a couple with 3 kids come and want to buy that house, I'm obviously going to sell it to them, but they're going to live in that house very differently. So if we can do and integrate applied building science and systems thinking and these program requirements into our house correctly, we can withstand the crazy things that people do to our houses. And again, integrating the structure, the systems, the enclosure in our houses into that particular climate zone that we're building in. So the Zero Energy Ready Home program has tons of resources for you to take advantage of. You can go to the website, you can get a specific webinar type training information from speakers in our industries such as Joe Stiebrick and Greg Cobb and Paul Raymer and Nick Hurst and all these folks. They're out there, they're resources. You really should consider taking advantage of that and taking advantage of what's available on the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home website. Third-party verification is another part of this program. So third-party verification that homes meet the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program national requirements is basically a program requirement. You have to work with a third party in order to verify that this is happening. And from a code perspective, the jurisdictions are relying on this third party to ensure that verification is happening and that these houses are progressing properly through the process. It does add value to the process and legitimacy to the ultimate label of this process as well, because there is some independence there, and that ultimate label that is presented to that house through this verification process has this government backing there. So there's this proof of compliance. So we're no longer saying, you know, I as a builder or as an architect, we do X, Y, Z. We're now able to actually prove that we're doing X, Y, Z, that we're building the most efficient, beautiful house that's going to be the most comfortable possible. I have some ability to say, I can prove that we're doing what we're saying we're doing because I have this label behind me as well. So it's definitely something to think about. This verification by approved agency is something that the Iecc has had in the code for quite some time. So an approved party is often a Herz rater, and the jurisdictions generally approve Herz raters or others to be an approved party to do code compliance. The DOE program also approves raters and others to be partners with the program to do third-party verification of the program as well. So you can go onto their site and find an approved rater, and I'll show you that in a second here. But this third-party services, we think of potentially consulting and participation in that integrated design process is one of the things that they can do because they have a lot of knowledge to share. They have great knowledge about the program requirements for the DOE program. They have great knowledge about applied building science. They might have good knowledge about assemblies and material selection, and ultimately, how does this verification process impact the construction schedule, and how can they limit that impact so that you can get on with the true construction of the house. So again, including that third party in these design charrettes and design integration processes and planning meetings becomes a crucial thing to think about. The other thing that the third party does is they do a proposed and a confirmed energy model of the house. We'll talk about the proposed model here in a little bit, but in essence, the first step of qualifying a house for compliance with the program begins with modeling the energy performance of that house to make sure that it's going to comply with that requirement. And then you also have to confirm that energy model at the end with information that's gathered throughout the construction process. So there is some inspection that is involved with a third party as well. That field inspection can be thought of as verification for it. It can be thought of as a compliance verification as well for code, but it also has a quality assurance mechanism built in there as well. And in some cases, insurance companies will accept this type of quality assurance and offer an insurance break, and that's something that you might want to think about as well there. Trade partner recommendations, well, potentially third parties have worked with a lot of different trade partners and might give you 3 or 4 names that you might be able to choose from that they think do good work from an HVAC perspective or a framing perspective or an insulation perspective. And they might also provide other services from HVAC design or consulting services to consulting on the different control layers and management systems that are out there. We're talking about water, thermal, moisture, layer systems that we need to think about in our assemblies. And they might have some opinions about material specifications and recommendations that you could take advantage of here. So there are lots of reasons to think about third-party services beyond just the true verification of the requirements of the DOE program here. The other thing about working with a third party that is ResNet certified or is a ResNet rater is that ResNet does a significant amount of quality assurance on the rater here. So rating providers are the institution within ResNet or the Residential Energy Services Network that actually certifies the rater. And the rating provider has to employ what's called a quality assurance designee to perform quality assurance on certified raters. This is the amount of quality assurance at a minimum that is happening out there. So 10% of the building software files, so the energy modeling is reviewed, and at least 1% of the rater's home's field work is reviewed as well. Now, ResNet ultimately performs QA on the providers, which adds another level of quality assurance as well to the process here. And the tracking of this quality assurance happens real time through what's called the ResNet registry. So every house that has a home energy rating done on it is registered in a national registry of homes, and you can go on that system to determine how the raters are doing, and I'll show you that here in a second. This is the website, actually. To get to a place on the website where you can review what type of standing the Herz rater has with ResNet. Are they currently certified? Are they on probation? Is there some issue happening with that rater? You can find out that information here on the ResNet website. You can also find other partners to the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program, and if a rater is partnered with that program and basically approved to do verification for the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program, on this website at the Zero Energy Ready Home website listed at the top here, You just search Colorado and it will give you everybody that is partnered with the program and able to work on these homes here. And as we talk in the future or a little bit further on in this presentation, you'll see that you as a builder and architect, you also need to partner with the program as well. And you could be looked up using this website as well. Now, that ResNet National Registry also offers a lot of transparency to the public there. And the public can access, or anybody can access, a house that has been uploaded to the registry and find out if an address that they are looking at has been rated, who did the ratings, the dates that those happens, the scores that happens, and I believe potentially other program information is available on that as well, but I'm not exactly sure. But this is where you would go to find out that information about a specific house there. The other thing about choosing a ResNet rater is that there's a code of ethics that ResNet raters need to abide by. So they're obligated to present accurate and unbiased information on all the homes that they work on, and work in a professional manner and disclose any potential conflicts of interest. The home energy rater has to provide a standard disclosure form with every house that they look at, and that standard disclosure form must be completed for each rating, must be provided to the clients, and must include the name of the community and house that they're working on, and must accurately reflect the rater's involvement with that house. If they have any financial involvement or other, how are they actually involved in the house? Are they just doing third-party verification and creation of the Herz index, or potentially do they have other economic involvement in that house there? So these are important things to look at and consider when you're choosing a third party to work with. Okay, so moving more to the specifics of the program, the first step is demonstrating project compliance. And that first step begins with what we call a Herz rating. So what is a Herz index? ResNet, again, is the Residential Energy Services Network. ResNet is the governing body of the home energy rating industry, really. They set the standards of practices and the standards for how things are modeled to develop that home energy rating index score. So there's the Herz, or the Home Energy Rating System Index score, and there's an ERI, or Energy Rating Index. And the Herz index isn't necessarily the same thing as an ERI. A Herz index is an example of an energy rating index, but there are other energy rating indexes out there. Most predominantly, the Energy Rating Index for the 2015 and the 2018 Iecc. They aren't necessarily the same number. It's basically using the same process for generating that index number there. Like a golf score, an energy rating index means that the lower the number, the more efficient that house is. So the lower, the better. Zero being that zero energy home. And you can think of it as a miles per gallon rating system for homes as a way to document the efficiency of a house in a number system. So in the Herz scale for ResNet, the reference home is based off of 100 on the scale, which is equivalent to a home that was built to the 2006 Iecc. So if we remember back to the beginning of the presentation, everything is basically benchmarked off of the 2006 Iecc. So that's how I can tell you that the 2009 is about 15% better than the 2006, and the 2012 is about 30% better than the 2006 Iecc. Everything is kind of that benchmarked off of that 2006 Iecc. So a Herz index of 0 is that net zero energy home, a home that produces as much energy as it uses. The DOE has determined that on average, the average existing home out there is scoring about 130 on the scale there. And It's used by the DOE to benchmark the core efficiency of the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program. It turns out that Energy Star also uses this system to benchmark the efficiency for the Energy Star program as well there. So what we mean by putting an X through this certificate is that this certificate is an informational certificate. It's a certificate that's designed to be that miles per gallon rating for the occupant or buyer of that house. It gives lots of great information, but it is not a compliance certificate. It is not a certificate that demonstrates that the house met the intent of code or that the house met the intent and other requirements of a program like the Zero Energy Ready Home program. So you're going to get the certificate, and it's a great certificate to put in front of buyers of homes, but you need to know what it is and what it isn't. And again, it's a marketing mechanism certificate, not a compliance mechanism certificate. So when we're talking about showing compliance with the home, for the DOE Zero Energy program, you can choose to go a prescriptive path or a performance path. Now, the prescriptive path is like the prescriptive path in the code, and the performance path is like the performance path in the code. Prescriptively, it's basically a rigid set of requirements that you must do. You can't go below those things, but you can exceed those requirements. In the performance path, you have greater flexibility because you're able to trade things off. You're able to have more choice in the specifications that you're putting into that home. On the prescriptive side, it's a single set of mandated measures. Again, you can go beyond, but you can't go below. And on the performance side, we basically start with what the builder wants to do. And we see is what the builder's current specification, is it going to achieve the goal of Zero Energy Ready homes, or is it going to be needed to be tweaked a little bit? And so what you're going to see is that the stretch to zero energy probably isn't quite as large as you think, and that most folks tend to lean towards or utilize the performance approach because it's much more flexible than the prescriptive approach for compliance. Now, modeling is not necessarily required. It is not required if you use the prescriptive path. The performance path does require that model, and we'll show that here in a second. In the prescriptive path, if there are jurisdictional amendments that are used or are created in that jurisdiction, then you can't use those. Whereas in the performance path, you might be able to use those jurisdictional amendments. And we'll show you how that demonstrates itself here in a second here. So again, the prescriptive path ultimately assesses eligibility for that house by using the number of bedrooms in the home to be built to determine the conditioned floor area of that house and how it relates to the benchmark home, what's called the benchmark home. So if the conditioned floor area of the home to be built, that we're proposing to build exceeds this value, then you have to move to the performance path of the house. And I'll show you the benchmark home here in a second. If the prescriptive path is eligible for use based on that prior step or step one, then you have to use the mandatory requirements that are detailed out in the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home Target Home process here. Again, these specifications are rigorous and you have to meet them. You can exceed them, but you can't go below them. You lose that flexibility of potentially trading off lesser attic insulation than is required in the prescriptive path for more R value in your wall system or your windows or something like that. Regardless, if you're using the prescriptive path, you still need to have third-party verification in the process. So another reason why most folks lean towards the performance path is that you still have to use a third-party verifier and you gain more flexibility in the performance path. So let's talk more about the performance path. So like the Iecc, one must comply with all the mandatory requirements of the program. and then you can get that flexibility after you've done that. So the flexibility comes in when you're selecting a custom combination of specifications to meet or exceed those performance levels that are required by the DOE program here. So the target home uses a Herz index score to be able to demonstrate this compliance, and the target home can also be called what we call a reference home, which is the term that's used in the energy modeling world to determine what we're going to compare our proposed building structure to. We have to compare that structure to something in order to create an index compliance pathway here. So ultimately, to understand the softwares, we want to understand how the software works to create that Herz index score that we're going to use as our compliance mechanism in this first step. And softwares basically work on this notion of delta T, or the temperature difference across a building component or assembly. This temperature difference governs heat gain and heat loss across the assembly, because remember, energy is always moving from higher concentrations to lower concentrations. So within the software, we describe the thermal envelope in its entirety, from its foundation all the way up to its attic or roof plane that's adjacent to ambient air or ambient dirt. So we're taking all of these building components and we're putting them in relationship to a delta T location, to the ambient outside there. So we're describing the thermal envelope, and then remember that thermal envelope is our barrier or our separation between conditioned space and unconditioned space. And we're trying ultimately in the energy model to measure the amount of energy that is flowing through those assemblies from higher concentrations of energy to lower concentrations of energy, which describes the heat loss in our buildings here. So when we're doing that, we create a reference home, and the software creates this reference home, which is the home that the rated house is compared to in order to quantify the performance and demonstrate compliance in our houses. A reference home is defined as a standard set of house specifications that generate a specific, consistent, and quantifiable energy performance in our homes. So the DOE or the code or any other program that's using a reference home has defined the amount of energy use that they want to achieve in that house, and your house that you're proposing to build is compared to that in order to demonstrate if it's going to be able to do that or not, ultimately. So which means that there are ultimately different types of reference homes out there. There's the Iecc reference home. There's a Herz reference home that just benchmarks the efficiency of a house on that Herz index scale. But the DOE and Energy Star programs have their own reference homes, and I'll show you how that works here in a second. And then some utility programs that are offering utility builder incentives or other types of rebates might have their own user-defined reference home as well. So what's ultimately happening inside of the software is that we build a house inside of the software, and the software creates two homes that are geometric twins of each other. The reference home is overlaid with the Iecc prescriptive envelope U values and R values there, and any type of size adjustment that might happen in that because of a program like the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program. The builder's house that's you're going to compare to the reference home uses whatever the builder decides to use for its envelope R values and U values, and then also puts the size adjustment on there. So ultimately, the builder's house is compared to the reference home to create a Herz target index score. And the house that is built, it must be equal to or less than the modeled Herz index score in this first step here. So that's, it's a lot of language that we've gone through to get to this point, but the ultimate point here is that we're creating a Herz target score that's ultimately demonstrating compliance in this first step. Everything else becomes the mandatory requirements of the home. This becomes the benchmark of the energy performance of that home. And again, your house has to be less than or equal to the Herz index that is developed through this modeling process there, plus potentially any size adjustment that happens. So to quickly go through the size adjustment, this formula has been created. The formula can't exceed 1 because the modification only modifies the Herz index score for homes that are larger than the benchmark home. And the benchmark home is described below here in this table here. So we're comparing the house that you want to build to these homes. So if you're wanting to build a 4,000 square foot, a 4-bedroom house, that house can't be more than 2,800 square feet. Otherwise, a size adjustment is going to happen. So the DOE program's Herz energy rating index target equals the energy rating index of the DOE target home times this size adjustment factor. And all of this happens inside the software, but I am going to show you how the math kind of works here as well in this example, just so you have an idea of what's happening inside of the software. So if I were to want to build a house that was 3,800 square feet and 5 bedrooms, I would be comparing it to a benchmark home that's 5 bedrooms and 3,400 square feet. So I'm building a house that's bigger than the benchmark home size here. So if I run it through the formula, I get a size adjustment factor that's 0.97. If through the modeling, I am determining that the qualifying Herz index for the DOE program is 54, I would multiply that by the 0.97, and I would drop my index score by 2 points to a 52, and my new benchmark is 52. So the house that I'm going to build has to be 52 or less. That's that first step of qualification. So I'm doing the energy modeling to ensure that the specifications that I'm putting into my thermal envelope are adequate enough to, in this case, to achieve a Herz index of 52 or less here. And so again, this is one reason why you'll see that it's not a mandate of the program that you install solar on the house. The program is trying to ensure that we have a sound, solid, rock-solid thermal envelope to build on, to future-proof our house so that we can put solar on in the future to get to true zero in the future here. So the size adjustment factor basically says in the program documents that on-site power generation may not be used to qualify a home for the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program requirements. However, it can be used to achieve additional Herz index scores to reductions needed for these larger homes to meet the benchmark home. It's not, in essence, making it less impactful to add that solar to it, but it's just trying to ensure that solar isn't impacting the need for a rock-solid building thermal envelope in our houses here. What we do see in this modeling process, which is a little bit contradictory right now, is that electric homes are currently, in essence, penalized in the Herz rating system. So this drives the Zero Energy Ready Home target score down if you're using electric equipment in that houses. But and why it's a bit contradictory is that often when we're talking about wanting to add PV to our structures in order to offset, PV obviously is generating electricity. So in order to offset the energy use in the house, we might want to ensure that we have electric appliances in our homes, for example, to use PV to offset that rather than gas appliances in that house. Right now, it's something that the DOE is struggling with. ResNet and the energy modeling world is struggling with right now as well, and hopefully we'll get some resolution to this dichotomy here in the future. Documents. So this is a document that's generated by the rating software, It shows the Herz index and the size adjustments that's done by that software. It gives the property information, and this is the DOE certificate that demonstrates compliance with the program. There's a projected version, which is demonstrated in this slide, and there's also a confirmed version of this certificate there. And both are important in Summit County here. So ultimately, the question might be is how big of a stretch is this for builders in our climate zone here? So when we're looking at this target home and the average target home in climate zone 7, it turns out that the average compliant benchmark DOE zero energy Herz index score is about 47 on that scale. Now, through some national data and breaking it down into a statewide data, we're seeing that about the average Herz index score in Colorado is about 57. That takes into account a large number of homes that are built here on the Front Range. So my guess is that the homes up in Summit County are already below 57 here, and that the stretch to get to 47 probably isn't going to be as great as it is here on the Front Range to get from 57 to 47. Interestingly enough, in Climate Zone 5 here on the Front Range, the average benchmark score for the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home Program is about a 55 there. So climate zones, that increased elevation does make a difference there. Mandatory requirements. So there are basic 7 mandatory requirements of the program. And then there's some other things that are encouraged but not necessarily required. So we have, we'll go through each of these mandatory requirements individually here. So the first is utilizing Energy Star as the foundation. So Energy Star's foundation ensures that we get that rock solid envelope and we get a Herz index benchmark score that is demonstrating that rock solid building thermal envelope. The DOE adds some additional things to the envelope to ensure that we're ready, going to be solar ready, that we have efficient water heating and distribution, that we have good indoor air quality, that we've optimized our HVAC or heating and cooling systems in our houses as well there. But again, it's basically using Energy Star as the foundation of our program to get that rock solid thermal envelope. And we'll be talking about those mandatory requirements next week. And those are in those envelopes here. So we have the 2015 Iecc, which is the kind of the foundation of the Energy Star program. We get tighter construction, we get better quality and performing windows, and we ultimately get compliance with the DOE program here. HVAC, again, the program really, being a national program, is kind of skewed heavily towards forced air systems. So, and forced air systems obviously have duct systems with that. But from a hydronic perspective that we see more often in Summit County, we want to make sure that we have good HVAC design and specifications. We're using high efficiency equipment and that we're protecting and ensuring that the installation of that hydronic system is working well, and potentially thinking about air source heat pumps as well in those climates there. Water efficiency is another big part of the program. This is the 4th mandatory requirement. It's talking about using some type of hot water circulation system and testing that hot water circulation system is actually performing. Or you can use more efficient hot water heaters and fixtures to meet the requirements. So if you're using a gas water heater, you have to have a gas water heater that's greater than or equal to 90% energy factor. Or if you're using an electric one, that is a 2.2 energy factor. You also have to have WaterSense labeled fixtures for your faucets and shower heads. there, and your hot water distribution system can't store more than 1.2 gallons. So you do have to think about that distribution in either method that you're using to comply with the Zero Energy Ready Home program. And we'll talk about that more in the future here as well. Lights and appliances, again, ensuring that all the appliances, exhaust fans, lighting equipment, water heating equipment, all are Energy Star qualified, working in that system in order to get that DOE Zero Energy label there. Indoor air quality relies heavily on the Indoor Air Plus program to ensure that our houses are not only radon resistant, but that we're using low emission materials, so the low VOC or off-gassing materials. We've dealt with combustion safety issues and filtration issues in our houses in order to get that DOE Zero Energy Ready Home label here. And then ultimately that we're renewable ready. We're ready to put PV on the house if we haven't already done so. Therefore, we have to provide the PV ready checklist and meet the requirements of that in order to meet the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program here. So there are these 7 core requirements. We're going to go into those in a lot more depth in our future presentations in this series here. From a Summit County perspective, residential buildings under this section shall be designed to comply with the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program. We're just about getting to the training implementation period, which is basically saying from July 1st through the end of the year that everything that's getting permit should be permitted under the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program, but we have some ability, some leeway in these first homes that are being implemented here. So it's really beneficial to permit under this program so that you can start practicing and understanding what it's going to take to meet the intent of the code when it becomes the need to offer full compliance after January 1st, 2021 here. Now, how do amendments affect the code? We need to think about this in a couple ways. So some of these amendments are listed below the blue line here. But if we think about before full implementation of the program, you were potentially able to trade off some of these features here using the area weighted U value or res check pathway in the code. Those things aren't going to be available to you anymore. So after full implementation, basically starting in July, really, you're going to need to use the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program and the Herz index implementation first step there to be able to determine how you're going to be able to trade off requirements of the DOE program if you so choose to do that there. What we do see is that Summit County also added some additional features that go beyond the DOE program. You have to install electric vehicle charging stations in your homes. And then for additions and alterations, they are not required to go to the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program. Additions and interior alterations to an existing building where the total valuation is $50,000 or less, or over, have to do an energy audit on that house and move forward using the recommendations of those audits that occur there. When we are permitting using the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program, you're required to show documentation that you're working with a third party and that third party understands and is helping you achieve the goals of the program. You'll have to submit a proposed energy modeling document that looks like these two documents. Right now, there are 2 primary softwares that are used in the state to demonstrate compliance with the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program. One is called REMRate, which is the document on the right here. You can see that they clearly say that this is a projected rating, but that it meets the requirements of the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program. So this is one of the documents that you would need to turn in. The one on the left here is a document from the Ecotrope software, and it's showing that it's unconfirmed, so which means that it's a proposed document there, and you could turn that into the city or jurisdiction as well to demonstrate compliance for permitting purposes. Now, the second documents that are printed with these certificates are these two documents. Again, they look a little bit different depending on the software that you're going to use. The one on the right is from REMRate. Again, it says it doesn't have a registry number, so it's not confirmed yet. It is a proposed document. One of the things I like about this document is this section here, which I've blown up a little bit. It gives you the target score. It also gives you the target score before on-site power generation, or PV, and after that is on there as well. So it's a good document that helps you do that. Then the Ecotrope document demonstrates all the different components of the document, all the different components of the house in the same way that the REMRate document does. Breaks them out individually there, but it doesn't seem to give you the Herz target score as clearly as the REMRate one does. But it does tell you that it is a projected project. I just blew up that information there. And so it's a good document to turn in, depending on which software package your third-party verifier is using here. Now, for the certificate of occupancy, you need to turn this document in, the certificate in again, ensuring that it's a confirmed document, not a proposed document. And then the supplemental documents as well need to be turned in, ensuring that it's a confirmed document and that they have the registration number for the Herz ResNet registry on these documents as well. That way you can prove that these homes have been verified and that they've been submitted to the program to be able to get the DOE label on that house and therefore are code compliant as well. So let's change tactics or course here a little bit and talk about how to communicate Xero. It makes a lot of sense to consider how you're going to communicate this program to your clients, to the buyers in Summit County, even though it is a code compliant program now. Because not everybody is going to market it, you will get advantage. And we see constantly, there's community like Stapleton in Denver here, that's a mandatory Energy Star community, and only one of the builders in the community consistently markets themselves as an Energy Star builder, and they've been able to grow a market there. So again, if you're not talking about it, you're ultimately giving it away, and you don't want to necessarily give it away because there's tons of value in demonstrating that you're doing this Zero Energy Ready Home program. So to begin with, it's interesting to me. I came across this years ago, and this kind of a new generation of this that Levi's has gone through. To demonstrate the story that can be told by a simple pair of jeans. We can talk about carbon emission, we can talk about sustainable fabrics, we can talk about water use, we can talk about climate impact, all these different things. So, you know, if I can tell a story about a pair of jeans, I should be able to have a compelling story to tell about my house. You know, one way to do that is to think about this NASCAR approach and putting all these labels on the house. Or you can simplify it and just go at the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home label and really talk about that label and how it utilizes Energy Star and Indoor Air Plus, or at least answers the questions that Energy Star and Indoor Air Plus and codes in the Building America program bring to the equation. But a lot of people like the NASCAR approach and basically using all of these labels when talking about the home. Another thing that this gentleman, Daniel Pink, brings out is that we often understand things better if we can demonstrate a comparison and a contrast things. And if we can isolate those compare and contrast statements, we can often tell a good story. So the DOE program has kind of leveraged that with these types of documents here. You can see that they can be customized to your particular structure, your particular project. But in essence, these bar graphs that are laid down on their side horizontally give you an ability to compare a DOE Zero Energy Ready home to an Energy Star home to an existing home from a comfort perspective, technology perspective, quality perspective, building durability perspective. So they can be used pretty effectively to help market and demonstrate the performance of the home that you're building. This is just another example of that breaks it down and makes it a little bit easier to see here. This one is just for the health and environment one that really is trying to leverage the benefit of building to the EPA Indoor Air Plus program. Now that's a separate program. You can market it separately, but you can market it in conjunction with the Zero Energy program here. You might think about how to create a message from a pre-sale perspective. You can leverage the DOE site there and ask people to go to that site. They can click on Colorado and they can get to you as a partner of the program and find out more information about you as a partner to the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program. They can determine how many houses you've built, what type of projects you've taken on. There are lots of interesting things they can do there. They can also view videos that the program has created to help simplify the message and really put forward that core message of what the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program is trying to do there. These compare and contrast documents have been put into flyers that you can use as a partner of the program. You're able to use any of the flyers that are out there, and you're able to customize those flyers to your brand, which basically means you can put your logo on those flyers. Also thinking about getting testimonials is a great way to contrast and throw out there that people are really liking what you're doing. You know, this one is a pretty powerful message that we're living in a more healthy home and we've been able to throw away our inhaler is a pretty impactful statement there. You can use displays to offer clarity through contrast. So you can compare and contrast different types of assemblies, different window technologies or other things that you're using out there. We often call this eye candy that you might have around your house, demonstrating different components that you might have if you have the ability to have a sales model in your house there. You can also message things well. This Live Better message talks about living better because of the energy savings that I have, because of the comfort that's generated in my Zero Energy Ready home, the healthy living and peace of mind that I have in that house, the quality assurance that's gotten through the verification process, and marketing advantage of the government label, and ultimately being future ready, having the ability to add solar in the future if it hasn't been put on from the start. What we do know is that 1 in 3 consumers have basically indicated that they don't trust the home building industry that much. So leveraging these labels, the independence of these labels is huge compared to just trying to get the consumer to trust you as a professional in the construction industry. It's unfortunate, but it's a reality out there. And so these labels are one way to help us demonstrate the value of what we bring to the process here. Third-party verification, talking about that third-party verification can be an important part of that message, demonstrating the certificates that are are done for each of the house, blowing up a home energy rating certificate and this DOE Zero Energy Ready Home certificate, having them in your sales models or in your offices to demonstrate to your buyers what you're doing. They're great ways to start conversations, and that's ultimately what we're trying to do when we're selling houses, is to prolong the conversation and demonstrate our value in this process. What's ultimately next for you? Next is that we need to, and together as a group, we're going to review the technical guidelines, but you need to go in and review that partnership agreement and the terms that are associated with that, and ultimately partner with the DOE program there. Strongly recommended. Register and sign the agreement. It's all done electronically. It's seamless. It's fast. It's easy to do. There is a short webinar that you should look at as well. There's some things that you can choose optionally since you're required to build all your houses to this program. You might as well take advantage of the 100% label that you can add to your marketing and also to your listing on the DOE site as well. You can also add language that shows that it meets the water sense guidelines if you're doing that program, Indoor Air Plus, which I don't have listed here, or any of these other programs if you're doing these programs as well here. You need to take the orientation training. It is different than what we're going through, although the training that we're doing is a much more in-depth version of the orientation training, but they want to make sure that you have taken the training, so you need to do that. And once you get your builder ID number through your partnership agreement, you need to transfer that number to your rater partner or your third-party verification partner so that they can print off the certificates and documentations and provide those to you for permitting and for getting your certificate of occupancy and for any marketing that you might do. As a requirement of the program, you have to provide the certificates to the homeowner as well. So that's something to think about, how you're going to do that. Adhere to the brand integrity and identity guidelines that are printed out on this website here. This website give you lots of resource documents, so looking at some of those resource documents could make a lot of sense. There are a couple different ways of getting to those resources, so you can think about that. And then truly leveraging the brand. Think about how you're going to leverage the brand. What I like to say is that if you don't brand yourself as a DOE Zero Energy Ready home builder, you're basically giving it all away. You're not taking advantage of the value proposition that it does. So, branding yourself as an Energy Star builder, branding yourself as an EPA Indoor Air Plus builder sets you apart because others aren't going to brand themselves as that, and you're kind of limiting the pool of folks that are truly taking advantage of the power of this program. Not only from a code perspective to build more efficient homes, but from this marketing perspective to build your brand. Customized marketing resources, again, these are available out there. In this case, Tim O'Brien Homes has customized this marketing brochure to them. There's new marketing material that's out there that you can take advantage of, and they are consistently making more and more different types of materials that you can use. You can also use this time to help your sales force understand what's going on here and how you're going to communicate that message. There's some tools out there that are real just education material that people that aren't intimately involved with the construction process could totally take advantage of to become better representatives of this program and of your ability to build this type of house out there. So leveraging this sales force becomes important, and we should take time to do that. You can also leverage the voice of authority. So they have these drop-in messages that you can put into your marketing material that says things like, according to the U.S. Department of Energy, I'll use Tim O'Brien Home as a select group of top builders, for example. So these are statements that you can add to your messages if you so choose. And then making sure that you're getting these documents out there. You can also apply for awards and take part in award ceremonies and then have these awards in your sales offices and in your offices to demonstrate the power of what you're doing out there. A lot of builders use this to great advantage to themselves, but it's really what you put into it, you get out of it. You have to apply for the award there. You can be part of this tour of Xero. So this is a website kind of virtual event, tour of homes that happens on the website. It can happen by just applying for a Housing Innovation Award, one of those awards that I showed you on the previous slide. But you can demonstrate the good things that you're doing. So you go to this website, you click on a home. This is an example of clicking on a home that was built in Boulder. You can add customer experiences to your web page that's demonstrating what you've done with this house. You can include pictures of the aesthetic beauty of your house as well as specific building features that might be included in that house. You can add other types of things that talk about savings. You can talk about contact information on your house, in this case for Brightleaf Homes. You have key innovations and features that you've included in that house. You have consumer experiences, again, potential videos of the house and things that are happening there, floor plans. It's pretty inclusive, all the things that you can add to that house there. So just to remember that just because this is part of a code program in Summit County, it doesn't mean that you can't market yourself as well and take advantage of that marketing benefit here. So in conclusion, it's super important to take that next step and become a partner of the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program. Start early in this integrated design process and bring all the players into your offices and start having conversations of how you're actually going to execute this new way of building if you haven't done it before. Demonstrate that project compliance by doing that energy modeling and ensuring that your specifications and what you plan to do actually meet the requirements of the program. We need to understand these 7 mandatory requirements and specifically the program requirements in the Energy Star program, the Indoor Air Plus program, and then those other requirements that DOE puts on top of that. I would strongly recommend branding yourself as a DOE Zero Energy Ready Home builder and taking advantage of that brand recognition out there. And then ultimately, the best thing about this industry is that we continue to learn. And we learn something new every day, and we figure out how to implement what we learn every day. So it's a constant process of building something, evaluating what we've built, learning from what we've built, and taking what we've learned to the next project. And we have that opportunity to do that right now. So thanks so much for taking part in our webinar today. I look forward to seeing you next week. If there are any questions, I am more than happy to hang out and have a dialogue with you. Or you're more than welcome to reach out to me directly at my contact information that's listed here.
Thank you, Robbie. That was great. Yeah, so if anyone wants to ask any questions, please write in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question directly. It does look like we have a question for you here, Robbie, in the chat from Nick. So Zero Energy Ready Homes reference home is different from a Herz reference home, but it's still based on a Herz rating?
Exactly. So the specifications for the Herz reference home is based off of the 2006 prescriptive requirements of the code, the R values and U values of that code. The reference home for the DOE program is based off of the 2015 Iecc at a minimum there, but it's using the exact same process, like you say, for generating that index score. And it's implementing that process, it's implementing the reference home into the index score system that Herz created or ResNet created.
Thanks, Robbie. There's another, I do have a question for you, actually. Have there been any analysis or reports on the construction incremental costs for pursuing zero energy ready homes?
Yes, there has been. It varies widely is the first kind of caveat because it depends on your starting point. If my assumption is correct that in Summit County, the average Herz index is not 55, it's somewhere lower than that, then your incremental cost to get to zero energy ready is going to be less than it would be on the Front Range, for example. But in general, they say it's about a 10% premium in essence, somewhere in that range. But they also have done studies that demonstrate that the value of, there are different types of value that can be done there from recouped costs of energy savings. So your payback period can be much faster than normally, and also increased value for the price of the home and continued value of the home that's happening there that can impact that first cost adjustment that is anticipated to be in that 5 to 10% range.
Perfect, thank you. And then one more question for you. What is the most often missed item when pursuing zero energy ready homes?
Yeah, so really the biggest thing and why I talk about starting early in the process to think about these things is the integration of all the different requirements. So we'll be showing the Energy Star checklist and then ultimately the indoor air quality checklist. Everything that's on those checklists that's pertinent to the home is a mandatory requirement. So it's easy to forget one of those mandatory requirements when your construction practice might change. So for example, I'll give you an example here on the Front Range. When a builder primarily builds basement foundations, but then does a walkout basement, they're not necessarily thinking about putting slab edge insulation on that walkout basement. But slab edge insulation is a mandatory requirement of the Energy Star program and therefore the DOE program. And so it's much harder to implement that after the fact than it would be if you took it into account during the planning phase. So I think really understanding all of those mandatory requirements is the thing that is missed there, because you don't necessarily utilize all those requirements in every structure that you're building there. And then after that, just at a starting point, the indoor air quality package is something that people tend to struggle with because it's the thing that's most new and unfamiliar with builders and architects out there.
That makes sense. So I'll go ahead and open it up to the group. If there are any other questions, feel free to ask them. As Robbie said, next week on the 16th, we have the Energy Star Foundation overview. So please feel free to join us for that. And if you haven't registered already, I'll include links to register in my follow-up email. Otherwise, thank you, Robbie, for the presentation, and thank you, everyone, for attending. We'll stay on the line for another 5 minutes or so.